Mrs. Bumblebrim was an all-around wonderful fairy maiden. Throughout her long life she has raised many fairy younglings, and all without having any her own. You see, Mrs. Bumblebrim was kept by the Creator, for reasons unknown to us on this side of eternity, from bearing any sons and daughters of her own. But that has certainly not stopped her from being called Mum. She has, at this point, no fewer than 60 or so fairies who call her by that name. Fairies she has raised, along with her husband, over her 215 years within the Ar Oak trees. You see, like our own world, fairies live in a harsh world, full of dangers, where in which they taste the sting of death, pain of loss, the sweat of labour and the bitterness of tragedy. Though life be rather simple and quiet in the Ar Oak, beyond this little safe haven there is a vast world, a world full to the brim of wickedness. And Mrs. Bumblebrim has been taking care of fairy children who have lost their own parents because of this wickedness. Whether the fairy young be orphaned by loss or abandonment, she is always ready to open her door in arms. I feel I must tell you now, in order that you might understand things within the fairy world, that fairies live for a very specific reason. They are made by the great Creator himself to keep the balance of nature in order, the untamed parts of the world untouched by man's own hand, until man, by God's will, be ready to cultivate it, at which time they may depart this world for the eternal joy and happiness of the next, granting they were faithful fairies, of course. To fulfill this great mission, many fairies took to trees, some to fields and plains, others to brooks or hills, spreading out all over the face of the earth in order to maintain the balance of things. Many kingdoms have been born out of necessity to achieve this such end, such as assigning various tasks, establishing jurisdictions of authority, responsibilities of all sorts, shapes and sizes, and of course the most important of all, defence. You see, fairies have many enemies. Though all creatures have their time, place and reason under the sun, they must be balanced, and there are forces in this world that would seek to unbalance things. Dark forces, wicked and evil. Some have eyes and teeth. They can be seen, heard, and even killed. Others have none at all, and simply exist as a ghost to frustrate the mission, to destroy, to wither, and to burn. Mr. Bumblebrim has spent the most of his 225 years in service to the kings of the Ar Oak tree. His title is Tenderman of the Outer Oak, while the Ar Oak is the crown jewel, as it were, for all fairies. Within 100 miles, many lesser oaks have grown and are lived in by oak fairies, some small and some not so small, but all equally less than the mighty Ar Oak and her beautiful oaken grove. And it is in this mighty tree, nestled in a knot, just under the first branch, we find Mr. Bumblebrim at work, carefully studying reports, checking on movements, security elements, reading dispatches sent in from the various tree mayors of the many lesser oaks all over. Or, to say it plainly, another day at the office. However, I wouldn't start our story here if it were just another day at the office. What kind of a tale would that make anyway? No, I'm sorry for our dear Mr. Bumblebrim. For now it is only the starting out of a normal day. That is, until now. For as his aged eyes read his report, a loud knock came at the door. This was not a normal knock, as one might knock upon a door, as if to call upon a friend. No, this was the type of knock where you know all at once something is wrong. The kind that makes you serious and alert, no matter how joyful you were only seconds ago. Out of poor Mr. Bumblebrim's mouth, full of shock and panic, "Come in," he cried almost in haste. The door swung open, and a young soldier cried, "Urgent report," so fast that he had finished saying it before the door slammed into the wall behind him. "Proceed," barked out Mr. Bumblebrim, without even a thought, eager to hear what had ruined such a peaceful morning. "From the Eldar Oak," the young soldier said. "Farthest western oak of our realm," said the young soldier again, which was met with a rude interruption from Mr. Bumblebrim before he could even finish. "I know where it is, lad. Read on." "Yes, sir." He answered and began to read very quickly. "Eldar Oak sacked. No survivors. Naught but death, web and despair be there." In the report. Which left our dear Mr. Bumblebrim with a look of terror. For things like this have not happened in Mr. Bumblebrim's lifetime. Not since the lifetime of his grandfather had something like this occurred. And even then, many fairies were carried off into captivity or escaped to the Pine Lands, not all mercilessly sacked and killed, for only the most wretched of pixie would destroy a tree. Pixies are fallen fairies, those who have willfully abandoned the mission or done some great wicked thing and refuse to repent, and thus are cast out from their trees. Breaking the silence, Mr. Bumblebrim spoke. "Have you sent out a rider to scout already?" "I have, sir," the young soldier replied, as if he was proud of himself. "I figured you might have," said Mr. Bumblebrim disappointedly. "Call him back. Too dangerous for only one rider. We must send a troop, and I will lead it at once," he announced sharply. And so Mr. Bumblebrim sent a messenger to the reigning king of the Ard Oak, Mallow the Noon Sun, so called for his burning red hair and bright yellow beard, and set out for a long ride. He told his ferryman, "We shall not rest until we reach the Eldar Oak," and set off into the morning sky, lightly packed, yet weighed down with worry and fret as to what could possibly have befallen them. For he knew how wicked the world was, and what evil lurked outside the Oak Kingdom.